Hello. Sorry, this is going up a little bit later in the day than I would normally have these up once the chapter is out. But unfortunately, well, not unfortunately. First of all, I had a job interview this morning. Second of all, we went to one of my nephew's track meet here in town, um, and that takes a little while to get to and a little while to get back from. And we were there for his pole vaulting event. He did very well. It's his first event. It's his first meet where he's doing the pole vault. He did some other track and field stuff last year, and he's doing some other events today. But the pole vault was his new one, and he seemed to have enjoyed it, so that was good. And now I'm going to do the review. So, chapter 1145 of One Piece. So we get two cover pages this week. First of all, we have one that is clearly about the anime, and this is it's about the fact that the anime will be coming back this Saturday Sunday, I believe, with new episodes for Egghead. And I like this cover page. This is just cute. It's a color page spread, but it's done anime style. It's run in the anime style, and it's all the Straw Hats sitting on just like a sofa or in a living room type area while they're watching a bunch of they're not like high definition TVs. They all look like more I like them. They all look more like more analog televisions, which is nice. And they're all just like relaxing and eating and drinking and cheering on as they're watching Luffy in Sun God form on the screen. So that's nice. Into the actual chapter itself, we have the first cover page, or we have the second cover page, which is the Yamato cover story one. And this one is showing that Ulti has been freed, and we see the dart wheel that she was pinned to in the background. That has been all smashed up, and she's freed. And she is currently, holding Page One, who is alive, and he's awake. And she's holding him. He's still chained up, but she's at least no longer chained. And we see Yamato in the background. And Yamato has gotten a hold of the sword that is Yasuie's and is holding on to that. So, we'll just see what happens with this. And then the name of the chapter is on Tree Route number 8 of the 2nd Forest District. So this is just in reference to like how they have like Elbaf divided up, and it's probably something where it's just like, the citizens of Elbaf know like what all the different districts are and the different branches and everything else like that. It's just something that like as you grow up, you start learning where all of these different areas are. It's the same thing with just like you're in a certain town, and like the town you grow up in, you know where stuff is, or the state you grow up in, you know where stuff is. Stuff like that. You're used to like, oh yeah, I know the name of that area, I know the name of that area, I know the name of this area. Although with Elbaf, I'm sure there's fewer changes that happen, because here in Lincoln we keep getting new neighborhoods popping up all the time, further and further out, as we incorporate other places, other smaller towns and areas. So, into the chapter. So we start off with a hunting party. We have Goldberg, Zoro, and Sanji have gone out, and they are currently hunting down basically what is a giant Brachiosaurus. And we have it that Goldberg, we get confirmation about Goldberg's shield in this chapter. His shield, he holds it up, and he's like, that thing's coming, Nash. And he holds the shield up, and the shield's like, what? Hold on. And the shield like grows, like gets much bigger. And it's already big because it's already a shield of a giant, but it gets bigger, and it blocks like the Brachiosaur's mouth like comes down and tries to bite the shield, and the shield blocks it. Nash is the name of the shield, blocks it. And Zoro and Sanji are there, and they do it's one of their combo moves that they do, where it's Zoro is kicked off by Sanji's legs, so he gets even more height in his attack, so he's able to, deal more damage on like a higher up target. And he's the one who is, sent flying and, slices through the Brachiosaur's neck. Essentially, it's a Brachiosaur. We find out in a second what it's called, but I always love it when they have to have Zoro and Sanji like work together. I just always find that funny. I mean, like we got that a little bit in Wano with like them having to, when they're initially fighting against King and Queen and stuff like that, when they're doing like the Wings of the Pirate King moment and stuff like that. Um, and there's a moment in, I think it's Film Z. It might, or not Film Z, Film Strong World, excuse me, where when they're fighting against Shiki, they do something similar to this, where like where like Sanji kicks Zoro up higher into the air so they can attack Shiki. Since Zoro can't fly and Sanji can, he can get up high enough, give Zoro a lift, and then have him start fly, give him a lift so Zoro can jump around and stuff like that, and then Sanji can essentially walk, airwalk now and everything with his skywalk and everything. So they've sliced off the head of the Brachiosaur. It is clearly dead and down, and I think it's Sanji that's like, I think we can serve this thing up. It's big enough even for a giant. And then Goldberg is like, so these Brachiosaur things, kind of like how they have like the moose is actually like a Tyrannosaurus Rex with antlers. This thing, I don't think this thing was one of the animals that popped up in Strong World, but it's the Gyrosaurus. I don't know. And he's like, they are delicious. And he's just like, it's a pain to deal with because it's got so much subcutaneous fat, but if you cook it in sake, it's amazing. So, and like this makes sense because Goldberg is the chef of the New Giant Warrior Pirates. He's their chef. And so it makes sense that he would know how to cook this thing. To be fair, a lot of the giants who live on Elbaf may just know how you cook these things. Just maybe not everybody cooks them because he's like, they're kind of a pain to cook, but we've got this. And Sanji's like, but we don't even have sake here. And Goldberg is like, oh, no. Well, there's a full set of cooking tools at the hunter's cabin, so let's look for some aromatic herbs on the way there. So this makes perfect sense, that there is a hunter's cabin down in the underworld area. That's where they still are, because they were the group that was, with Luffy and Loki and everything there. We get a little bit of a Loki flashback in this chapter, but we don't get like a Loki Hyrudian huge over-the-top flashback that explains everything. No, we haven't gotten there yet. And what ends up happening, so it's like, this just makes sense, because it's like they would have a hunting cabin down there, because sometimes if you're down there hunting for long periods of time, they would, okay, well, we're going to spend some, like, kind of, you have like a fishing cabin or a hunting cabin out in the woods or something like that. It's just like, well, we have this place fully set up, there's a stove and an oven and plenty of stuff for cooking and cooking utensils and materials and everything else like that. So that makes perfect sense. So they're just like, oh, we'll just stop up at the cabin and get that stuff. And Sanji's just kind of like, okay. And then Zoro was pointing at Nash, who was like leaning against a tree. And he's just like, and this thing, how does it work? Is it a devil fruit? Yes, Zoro, it's the shield no mi. And Goldberg explained it was like, that was back when my pops went to take down Big Mom. This thing's got a soul in it, And Zoro is like, Big Mom? Is like the one who's like kind of like, oh, well, that's interesting. And they do kind of have Zoro and Sanji like contrasting clothes here, because the way that it's drawn here at the moment, I mean, like, I think we got like the color. Yeah, we did get like the colored cover recently that shows that like Zoro's outfit is green right now, and Sanji's outfit is, I think, light blue. I think is what Sanji's current outfit is, based on what the cover page or what the manga cover was for the newest Tankobon, where we see the Straw Hats and their Elbaf gear, and they're kind of in, each of them is like in their corresponding colors, for the most part. They're corresponding key colors and stuff like that. Luffy's in red, Sanji's or Usopp's in, I think, yellow and combos, Nami's in orange, that type of stuff. And so Zoro is the one who's like, Big Mom, because Zoro didn't really interact with Big Mom. He wasn't on Whole Cake Island, and he wasn't really involved in fighting her when they were on Wano Beyond Up on the Roof. And even then, you know, it was like, yeah, she's got, you know, Zeus that she had with her, and, you know, Napoleon, and Prometheus and such. He's got, you know, she's got all of them with her and such. So Zoro's not as familiar with this. Sanji is the one who's interacted with Big Mom the most, in all honesty. And so they start Zoro and Sanji are carrying the head of the Brachiosaurus thing, and then Goldberg is like carrying the rest of the thing, and he's like, and Zoro's someone like, so it's kind of like Zeus then, and so I don't know if it's Goldberg that's talking here, or if it's Nash. I think it's Nash, who's saying, and he's like, what? You guys know Zeus-san? You mean that Zeus, the top commander of the homies? So I don't know if that's supposed to be Nash talking or Goldberg talking. I can't tell. It's not specific enough to which one is talking. And Zeus is, or like Sanji or Zoro's is like, he's our navigator's servant now. So this is the whole reference to like the fact that like Zeus is no longer listening to Big Mom, even if she is still alive. He's completely left her and is fully loyal to Nami. And either Goldberg or Nash are like, what? Because like, if Nash is a homie, and even if he wasn't made by Big Mom, he may have been, well, he would have had to have been made by Mother Carmel way back when, because this is, or, well, okay, let me think about this for a second. Okay, so we know that 63 years ago is when the Big Mom's flashback on Elbaf happened, when Goldberg, Road, and Loki were all born, is 63 years ago. And at that point in time, Mother Carmel's the one who had the Soru Soronami, had the Soul Fruit. And she probably made several different homies while she was on, you know, on Elbaf during that whole time frame. And we know that right at the end of their time on Elbaf, she made the Pandora, the sun homie, to put out the fire that Big Mom started way back when. And I guess it's possible that in that same time frame, this shield homie Nash was also created, or it may have been in a different battle, because we know that Big Mom has probably clashed up against the Giants a couple of times over the decades, since she's been a pirate almost, almost the whole 63 years since then, since she started so young, that it is quite possible that during one of the interactions, maybe something happened and she made a shield into a homie, and that's the shield that Goldberg's father had, and now it was this, and now it's his shield or something. Or it's quite possible that like Goldberg's father almost died during the fight with Big Mom way back when, and then they took his soul and put it in the, like, Mother Carmel took his soul and put it into the shield. That's a possibility too. We don't get a whole lot of elaboration on this, but we get that. So we cut back to where Luffy is with Loki and Hyber-Dean and the other God's Knights and everything, or not the God's Knights, and the other the group there that's Gerd and Aizat Hyber-Dean and Stanson and such are all there, and they're like, okay, well, don't worry about this. We're gonna, they're trying to deal with Loki at the moment. And Loki apparently has now told them about the fact that the God Knights are there, since he hadn't gotten around to that last time. He's explaining to them that the God Knights are there, and Luffy's like, God's Knights? Because he doesn't quite know what they are. And Loki continues, and he's like, yeah, they showed up here. I'm in pain. And Hyrudine's the one off to the side, and he's like, people from the world government, so they're the ones who did this to you. And Loki's like, Exactly. Ow. And we see him, he's still like laid out on like the I think I pointed this out last week or last time that they have like the logs underneath him to kind of give him so he's not lying directly on the cold hard ground. So he's like elevated a bit and like Gerd's kind of like sitting next to him on the logs and then like Hyrudine's off to the side and then Rhodes off to the side. As they're talking, and Hyrudine's like, you must have gotten into trouble with someone while you were gone, right? And this is, of course, referencing back to as far as where after Loki killed their father, I think that was 12 years ago, was I believe when he killed Harald, that, you know, killed Harald and then took the devil fruit, whatever it was, and then went out to sea. And then caused some havoc for a while, was captured by Shanks about 6 years ago, brought back, or defeated by Shanks about 6 years ago, was brought back to Elbath where he was then tied up to the tree and has been there for the last 6 years. So that's what's going on there. And Loki's like, of course not. Like, he's like, of course not. I didn't deal with them. And he's like, if I'd gone far enough to cross paths with guys like them, I'd already be the king of the world. So, and this is like, Loki's kind of like giving off the deathbed thing of like, if I'd gotten that far, I would have been king of the world. This is not, it's like, I could have been a contender. I kind of would find it hilarious if they made Loki talk like Brando, but I don't think that's going to happen. Also, Marlon Brando is from Nebraska, so I would be happy with that. But like, so Loki is referring to the fact that like, if I'd gone far enough that I had to deal with the God's Knights, I would have gotten like all the way to Marie Joie. And if that had been the case, it's like, okay, this, 12 years ago, I think all three same admirals would have been there, plus Sengoku would have been the fleet admiral 12 years ago. So to a degree, watching a battle between Loki, all three of the original admirals, and Sengoku at Marie Joie would be rather amazing. The problem is that unlike Isho, unlike Fujitora, Loki I don't think would care that much about the slaves that are in Marie Joie, and he probably wouldn't care about them getting injured or dying in the process of the battle. I don't think Loki would care that much about that. He might care a bit, but probably not too much. But we don't know that enough about his personality to determine that. But to be fair, watching Loki just like stomp his way through Pangea Castle, just like squashing all of the guards, squashing all of the Gorosei, swinging his giant hammer all over the place, just like swatting all of them like they're insects, just the way that they look at people. And just like doing all of that, getting to Eam, and then just like flicking Eam off the top of the world. That would be semi-satisfying to watch, in all honesty. Given all the crap the Gorosei and Eam and the Celestial Dragons have done. Just like have all of the Celestial... Okay, I know this is a sick thing to say, but just like line all the Celestial Dragons up, and then just like let Loki play golf with them. Like they're on tees. Just like let Loki do that with his hammer again and again and again and again, for all the adult Celestial Dragons. And then like have the last 5 of the Gorosei, and then Eam is the last one, and then it's just like they just go flying all the way off the red line, so far off the red line. That would be funny. That would have been one way to take down the Gorosei. At the very least, it would have been very entertaining to watch them try to fight against Loki. So Loki's been playing this just like, I never would have gotten that far, and even if I had, I would have been king of the world. Now, the question is, and we're going to find out in a second, that Loki is possibly a little bit more familiar with this king of the world concept, as in closer to the emo version of king of the world, than just, if I'd gotten that far, if I'd gotten to Marie Joie, those Celestial Dragons would have been gone and done, and I would have taken care of any of the ones who showed up and tried to stop me, and then I would just be the one sitting on top of the red line now, being in charge. That puny little human throne that they call the empty throne would be gone, and I'd be the ruler of everything. Again, whether that's big talk or not, you know, trying to, you know, bolster his own image is a little bit left up for debate. But that's most likely what he's implying. But given we're gonna find out something in a minute that might imply he knows a little bit more about that, than, you know, just like a regular person being like, oh, if I manage to make my way to Marijois and is able to fight my way all the way up to the empty throne and sit on the empty throne, then I've now declared myself ruler, just like the Iron Throne in Game of Thrones, because that's what it's based on. So Luffy's like, world government warriors? Because he's not, like, Luffy does not know who the God's Knights are. They are not something he has probably ever heard of. Dragon knows about them, but that didn't mean that Luffy did. To be fair, Loki and Dragon have never had a conversation. To the best of our knowledge, they haven't. But Luffy and Dragon have never had a conversation. At least none where Luffy just wasn't like a baby or something. So this is when Goldberg, Zoro, and Sanji have returned with the giant Brachiosaurus, because I can't pronounce the thing that it's called. So it's just a Brachiosaurus. Bring that back. I would like it if in the anime they make it yellow, because then it's another reference to Queen being defeated, which is just funny because he deserves it. And so they get there and I was like, we caught one, and Luffy is just like, oh man, that thing is huge. Like, Luffy's like, his stomach is bigger than his eyes at the moment. To be fair, both his stomach and his eyes can grow to enormous sizes, so that statement is kind of redundant with Luffy. So they start getting it all ready, and Zoro is just like, I'm the one who took that one down. And Sanji's off to the side and is like, oh yeah, it was awesome. For a second, I thought a broccoli was dancing through the sky. So just them arguing again. And like, even in the bottom of the next panel, we see them like pointing and arguing at each other, which is just funny. So Stanton has gone off and he's chopped up a bunch of wood and is like getting a fire ready so they can cook the dinosaur. So that's what's going on there. Goldberg's thanking him and he's like, oh yeah, I love those things. They're really good to eat. So they're all getting ready to go. They're, you know, we jump ahead a little bit. They've started to cook the dinosaur. To be fair, this group doesn't know a whole lot about what's going on up in, you know, the Sun Realm, the Sun Kingdom area, with the God's Knights and with the fire and with the monsters and everything. They don't know about that yet. Otherwise, I think they would be like, okay, we're going to go and deal with that first, then come back and deal with you, Loki. We're going to go deal with something that's a little bit more of a pressing matter since you're kind of pinned down and chained back up now. First, we're going to move your hammer further away from you so you can't pick it up. So they're getting all that ready. And they're like, all right, it's ready. It's like so good because Luffy's so happy. And he's just like, hey, that piece isn't yours. And like Luffy has picked up just like this stick of meat with just like a giant hunk of meat on it. And he like runs over to Loki and he's like, here, Loki. And he like smashes it down onto Loki's head. And this is like a very hot piece of meat that Loki and Loki. Dyslexia, don't ask. Don't judge me, I have dyslexia. And he's like bashing the meat down onto Loki's head, which is just funny. And he's like, you bastard, that's hot, which is true. And Gerd is just kind of like sitting there watching. She's like, Luffy-kun, careful, his wounds might open up. To be fair, Gerd does not care if Loki's wounds open up again, to be fair. And like, so Loki is now just yelling at Luffy and he's just like, you trying to kill me? And, you know, Luffy is just like, well, at least you're feeling better. And it's just like, anyway, just eat already. You won't heal if you don't eat. And like, this is just very reminiscent of like any time that some of the crew gets sick or something. Like back at or crew gets sick or sad or something back at Alabasta when they were getting ready to leave Alabasta and they're on their way from Alabarna back to the coast to where the Mary is. Luffy is like, you know, asked Nami if she wants some meat to make her feel better because she's really sad about leaving Vivi. And then later on when we get to Thriller Bark, after they've had like the big battle and they're having the big party and everything, Zoro is still like very badly injured from taking in Luffy's pain. Not that Luffy knows that at the time, he still doesn't. Sanji and Robin, I think, are the only two Straw Hats that know what happened there, basically. Um, and what ends up happening is they just like Zoro is just passed out and Luffy is trying to get Zoro to drink sake to make him feel better, and Nami's yelling at him to not do that. To be fair, it would help with killing some of the infection, but I don't think that's going to help overall. So Loki is now just like chowing down on a bunch of the meat that they gave him. And he's just like, it's hard to swallow like this. You think I can eat lying down. Help me sit up. Cough. And they're like, geez, so demanding. And I'm pretty sure that's still Gerd talking. So they get Loki kind of sitting up a little bit. And he's getting, he's still coughing. And Luffy's like, yikes, did you choke? I've got some soup here too. And he runs over and he picks up this giant mug and is like running back at Loki, getting ready to like give Loki this, this soup. Where they get a giant mug from, I'm assuming the cabin. And we get a little bit of like a panel that's very similar to the Enel face panel with Loki, but like his eyes are bandaged, so his eyes aren't bulging as nearly as much as what happens with Eneru with that. And Luffy's running over with a giant mug, and he's like, that stuff's still steaming, keep it away from me! And like Luffy trips, and the stuff just splashes all over Loki, which is just not fun. And Gerd is just like, looks like he got himself burned in another burn, huh? And Loki is just like, get him out of here, somewhere far away. This menace, far away from me. And Luffy's like, sorry, I didn't mean to. So, watching this seed, I hope they kind of draw this out a little bit in the anime, just because it'd be funny. This made me think of, okay, so it's like, this is what it would be like having Luffy as a waiter. To be fair, given what happened way back at Baratie in the East Blue, we kind of know what it would be like to have Luffy have to work for you, or as a waiter, or in a kitchen area. And it doesn't end well, necessarily, unless someone shows up and attacks your ship, and then you have to have Luffy fight for you. But, like, for the most part, not gonna go well. So, yeah, Luffy as a waiter. This also just made me think of, okay, Sesame Street, there's, Grover. And Grover, one of the running gags that they do with Grover a lot is him being a waiter at a restaurant. And there's like this old guy, I think he's Mr. Johnson or something like that, that's just this other Muppet that they have there. And like Grover is trying to be a waiter to this guy, and every single thing goes wrong every time. And like sometimes there's other guests and other people that he's serving as a waiter and everything, but it's just like Grover as a waiter is just, Luffy would make Grover look like the best waiter in the world, I think. Or they would get along wonderfully. I don't know if there's any One Piece Sesame Street art, but Luffy and Grover would get along great for that. And get along great as horrible waiters, is where my brain with that. So, Gerd is getting Luffy's attention, and she's like, just like, hey Luffy-kun, and she like gives him a thumbs up for like getting Loki hurt, and Zoro and Sanji's just like, oh, you too, Gerd-chan, for like just like the fact that she likes Luffy, I guess. But it's also like, because Gerd doesn't like Loki, and generally just all of the bad vibes that we've heard about Loki, just this whole arc, imply that, yeah, it's not surprising that a lot of the giants don't like him, given everything that's happened. But it's also like, okay, can we get to more specifics as to why, like, maybe Gerd herself maybe is not a big fan of Loki? Pet the baby. And what ends up happening is Zoro and Sanji are now sitting down, and Sanji is like eating the soup, and Zoro's got like he's using one of his swords. I think it's supposed to be he doesn't have Shunsui anymore. But he, just one of his other swords, he's like stabbed the meat through, and he's like, good dinosaur meat. To be fair, it's been a while since they've had dinosaur meat. I was gonna say the last time I think they technically had dinosaur meat would have been way back on Little Garden, which is appropriate because giants, and I think they ate the dinosaur meat with Dory and Broggy after they defeated Mr. 3 and his group, after they beat Galdino and such. I think that's when they ate the dinosaurs that Sanji and Zoro caught. And Sanji's like, what the hell did this guy do to make the giants hate him this much? And Zoro's like, so that whole promising with Luffy, it was a lie? And Loki, like, they took a couple of the logs and, like, put them up behind Loki. So instead of, like, pillows at, like, or, like, having, like, one of those beds that, like, rises up at the hospital or put pillows behind someone, they just put logs behind him. Which is just funny. And then, like, you see off to the side, Goldberg is still sitting there, still cooking and everything. They got, like, these two big fire things set up over there, and he's, like, roasting the meat and, like, making soup and everything. So we've got all that going. And Loki's, like, about, where Straw Hat is, unfortunately that part's true. He's like, yeah, I did make that promise, and I guess he had every intention of keeping it. It's just, you know, technically the other end of the bargain hasn't been met yet. And Luffy's like, oh yeah, let's hear it. And he's like, but you guys still haven't kept your promise to take off my chains. It's like, well, we took off most of them. And Loki continues, and we get like a close-up of him of just chowing down on the meat. And Hyrule is just off to the side, just like glaring at him in the next panel. But Loki's like, you know, chowing down, and he's like, you really want to meet the red hair that bad? That badly? But I get it, you know, that feeling, looking up to a pirate when you're just a kid. And, you know, we cut to, you know, Luffy is just like sitting there chowing down on me also, and he's like, you talk like you had someone like that too. And he's like, yeah, I did. And Loki's like, too bad you were just a brat back then. And I was like, Luffy wasn't even alive when this conversation would have happened that you're about to think of. The only Straw Hat, two Straw Hats, that would be anywhere near alive during this time frame would be Brook, and this might have been still when he was part of the battle convoy before setting out to be a pirate, or Jinbei. And if anything, Jinbei would have been a child when this conversation was happening, depending on how old you are in this conversation. So we get a small flashback where we cut back to sometime, I'm assuming 40, 50 something years ago, depending on how old Loki is in this flashback. Since giants just age weirdly, and like Colin is 20, but he looks like he's like 8, the same age Luffy was in the first chapter. He's like 7 or 8 years old is what he looks like, but he's like actually 20. And like we've seen Hyrule in flashbacks, but then like he doesn't look quite the right age and stuff like that for like being 18 years older than Loki. And then like Loki like looks like he's growing at the same rate or faster than Hyrule just because he gets so tall. So it's not very well. It doesn't quite track very well. We don't get that full setup for like how, you know, how that goes. But we cut back to sometime at the very least more than 38 years ago. Because 38 years ago is when the God Valley flashback happened. And this is taking place at the very least before then, because we have Rocks in this flashback. And he's still a silhouette. We don't get any other details about him. He's just a silhouette. And Loki's like there, and he's like, take me with you. And it's like the typical child Loki that we've been seeing. And Rocks is just like, I didn't come all this way to meet a snot-nosed little punk like you. Don't make me say it again. And Loki is just like, then let's fight. Fight me. Type of thing. And we cut, and Rock's just like, And then we cut, and Loki's just on the ground, bloody and beaten. And we hear a voice going, you pulled a weapon on a kid. Seriously? And then we have Rocks go, shut up, Newgate. So this is Whitebeard. So we get a little bit of a Whitebeard in this moment. And I mean, so we've seen Whitebeard has had a little bit of an interesting concept when it comes to having like children fight. So we know that during the Odin flashback, we saw like young Blackbeard and young Jozu fighting against like young Shanks and young Buggy on the Roger crew. But at that time, you know, like they're not going to kill each other. It's not a life and death situation. The Roger pirates aren't going to kill the Whitebeard pirates or vice versa during this time frame. It's more like a friendly skirmish to like just, you know, see how much stronger each of them has gotten. And even then, it's like the kids testing their mettle against each other. I don't think Rox would have handled it the same way. And we don't know how quickly Big Mom has had her children start to learn how to fight when they're, as they grow up. We don't know exactly, you know, fight against other pirates at that point in time. We know Katakuri was fighting from at the very least his teenage years, to, you know, protect, you know, be the perfect big brother and everything. So we get some of that. But, like, yeah, we get Whitebeard scolding Rox, which is kind of funny. And then Rox just beat up a child. That's not going to help any of the theories of, like, maybe Rox is a good guy. Maybe not. He beat up a child. To be fair, it is kind of the whole thing of, like, trying to make the kid realize that, like, pirate ship is not the best place for a kid, even if he is a giant. And then we cut back to Loki, and he's like, I was just born in the wrong era. And, you know, this is kind of like that whole kind of like the callback to like Roger talking, you know, seeing what happened with like Joy Boy. It was just like, Joy Boy, I wish I could have been born in the same time frame as you or lived when you did and everything. So it's like that callback, but it's also like this whole concept of like people are like, I was born in the wrong era. I would have been amazing in the 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever. You know, being a big shot back then. And, like, had Loki been born earlier, he probably would have tried to get onto Rox's crew and possibly succeeded. But Loki was a kid back then, and unlike Shanks, who's going to be a bit more gentle when it comes to turning down a kid to be on his crew, he just beat up the kid instead. In that regard. Which is be it. Pet the baby, pet the baby. I love the baby. I'm almost done with this chapter. You're a good girl. So, we cut to the other part of this double page spread where we see Dorian Bragi and the big, the Skval edition of the Great Eric, the Cloud Ship edition. And they're like, these Draugr, the zombie warriors, look like a damn army of the dead. True. And it's just like, ga-ba-ba-ba-ba, full of ghosts too. Looks like those, some kiddie horror story. So we see the ship going through and just like bashing into some of the different nightmare monsters. And then like Dorian Bragi and the rest of the crew are like bashing in more of the monsters. We see something that looks like a cockatrice. There's at least 2 of the Draugrs. 3 of the Draugrs, excuse me. There's like the bear with the helmet. We see the fake Loki. We see like one of the ghost things in the background. And they're probably dealing a good amount of damage to these things. And they're like, wipe them out. Wipe them all out at once. And it's just like, and this one, is that Loki? Pointing at the Loki one that we see showing up. And Scopper's just like, leave him to me. And he jumps into the air, spins his axes around, and just like slices through the fake Loki. Now, as was pointed out in the last chapter, you know, at times it's like, well, Scopper said he wasn't going to help the Straw Hats at all. This is different. This is not just Loki managing to escape and then Luffy, chaining him back up, which happened. Luffy kept his promise. This is something far greater than just Loki showing up or Loki being freed and causing problems at the moment. This is far more problematic. It's just like, Scopper's like, okay, I was gonna just go home and wait for my hot wife to get home from school. And now there's giant monsters popping up all over the place. The tree is on fire. And the children are being kidnapped. I should probably go help. Is like probably what's going through Scopper's mind at that point in time, to like go and join the giant warrior pirates to deal with this. So they're going through and beating up a bunch of these things, and it's just like good thing those things were born from the kids' imagination. If they'd seen the real monsters, would they be even stronger? And it's just like glad they never did. It's like hearing stories is one thing, to like imagine how strong something is, and like to a kid something being really strong is very different than like an adult it being very strong. There's still, I mean, like, clearly it's going to take a bit of effort to get all of these things destroyed, besides just possibly like knocking out Kiringham, but that's not happening yet. They don't know about him yet, or at least not 100% know about him yet. So Scopper's kind of thinking, he's like scratching his head, and he's like, looks like there's more. 3 more? That strange voice, it can't be hidden. I can hear it clear as day. Even if Elbath isn't safe, this really is the end of days. So he's like, there's 3 of these voices that he's hearing, and it's just like his hockey is like sensing them. We know that Roger had the voice of all things. I don't think there's any confirmation that Rayleigh had the voice of all things. But like, we know that Rayleigh had like really good conqueror's hockey, just like, Roger did probably, and is probably really good with like armament and observation hockey. Scopper might have been the one out of the 3 of them, kind of like with Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji. Sanji is the one who has like the more high spec, besides Luffy's future state hockey, had the more high spec observation hockey. So Scopper might be kind of that way too, and he's like, I keep sensing these things, these voices, these, spirits, whatever, these, these presences on the outskirts of my visions, but I can't quite place them yet or figure out what they are, but I can tell that it's not good. And as I said, it's just like, he's like, even if Elbath isn't safe, then that's really the end of days. It's like, yeah, if Elbath is in trouble, that's not good either. So we cut to the firefighting unit, which is this is the one that has managed to get to where the school is, and they are currently just using the hoses to spray as much water, high pressure water and such as possible, to try to put out the fires that are on the branch where the kids are, because it's like that would be like the main priority of getting the fires out, would be the branches where the kids are going, where they can't stop the kids from going. So there's just like the sea cloud, use the sea cloud water. Is it working? There's way too much fire here. So they're just like firing, using as much of the water as they can to try to put out the fire. And we see Saul, and he's like, firefighting team, thank you for coming, but hurry. And we get this kind of a, well, it's not a diagram or anything, it's just like we get the picture where we see Saul has managed to beat up the Fenrir monster thing, and he's saying like the kids are heading straight into the flames, and we see on the branch where the flames are, and that the kids are like almost right to where the flames are. And we see the firefighters off to the side on the bottom side of the branch, on the other side of the branch, just, with the water gushing up, geysering up out of the hose to try to put out the water, to try to put out the fire. And they're like, we're spraying at max pressure. The valve's about to burst. Now, a second ago they mentioned a sea cloud, which is probably sea cloud water, which we know that there's all of like the water, the clouds around Elbath, that are like the sky, the, island clouds and stuff like that they have for like Witheria and Skypiea and stuff like that, and what was on Egghead, and like they're here too, just for how big Elbath is. It's able to support the cloud boats and stuff like that, so they have like seawater clouds is what they're using, that are, that they're able to use to try to put out the fire. And they're like, this is not good. We're, they're at full blast. We can't make them go any higher. And the kids, they're still going closer and closer to the fire, following, following Gunko's arrow. And Saul's like, please put out the fire now. You can do it. And he's just like shouting and shouting, and the kids are just getting closer and closer to this. I'm assuming in the anime, this is going to be like a bit more drawn out, with like them getting closer and closer and closer to the fire, as like they're trying to put out the use the water to put it out and everything like that. And it doesn't look like Saul's had the chance to like wrangle any more of the kids to pull them back yet, because he had to fight against the Fenrir beast. And we cut to where Gunko and Summers are like looking down on what's happening from a higher up branch, and he's like, look, Gunko, the kids are gonna burn to death. If they burn, do you think they'll wake up? And Gunko is like, they'll wake up from the heat, crying out for their parents with their faces full of pain, and in the end, they'll be nothing but bones swallowed by the flames. Can we get Jenna Ortega to voice Gunko as like Wednesday Addams? Can we get that? This seems like a line that she would be able to pull off quite well for this moment. That would be fun. Maybe. And we see the kids are just getting closer and closer and closer, and just like, Summers, effed up bastard that he is like, hey, that's kind of touching, and he's just like laughing at it. And then we cut where we have a panel of Jinbei, who's grabbing a bunch of the sea cloud, and like we see the firefighter, and it's just like, they're gonna be, what's going on, firefighting team? The fire is still not out. So it's like, we're at max pressure, it's not going out. And Saul is running to try to get to the kids, and he's like, kids, stop. And like Summers, we see him laughing, and like Ilva is the one who has like just reached the fire, and Jinbei has done his like over the shoulder current throw that he does, Ippon Ziori, which is basically just like the current throw that he does, that we've seen him use multiple times throughout the story, where he like grabbed a bunch of the sea cloud water and just like threw it over the top of the branch. And like we just see Saul's horrified face at this. And it's like he's trying to run to get to the kids to stop them. And it goes, and Jinbei's like, all right, I guess it's over now. Did I make it in time? And it's just like, we're here, get here quick. And like Jinbei jumps onto the Skval's ship, console ship, as it's going. And Nami's like, nice one, Jinbei. And it's just like, and Brooke's like, that gave me chills. And we see the water like splashes, the sea cloud water splashes down onto the branch, and just like extinguishes the fire that's there, with like the little Skval ship going in the foreground as that just like splashes over that. And the firefighter giants are like, oh my god, and Saul's like, oh, thank god. And Chopper and Robin are like, oh, yay. Like, that relieved moment. And we see like there's still smoke as the fire is being put out, but that part is at least extinguished for the moment. And we get like a the dictation snail or whatever it is that they have is like, the fire on tree route number 8 of the 2nd Forest District has been successfully extinguished. So for that exact moment, at least the kids aren't going to burn at the moment. And it's just like, the children are safe, is like someone shouting, and then like the message is just like, they escaped the danger of the flames, but they still haven't stopped. So they're still following Gunko's arrow. But they're not burned alive, which is good. And we see Dori, Bragi, and Oimo, I think. Oimo or Rakashi are like cheering, and it's just like, that was close. I believed in you guys. That's right, firefighting team. And they're just like cheering on the firefighting team. And the team are like, and they're like shouting at them, your gods are protecting Elbeth. And they're like, we're not all that, but we're glad they're safe. Yeah, really, they're like, we didn't do that, but yes, we're glad it's over. We're glad that fire's out, so the kids are safe for the moment. And Robin and Chopper's like, Robin, just now. And she's like, yep, that was Jinbei nearby. And we cut to the last bit of the chapter, last page, and we see Colin. He's like, Jinbei, that was so cool. Thanks, Jinbei. And Jinbei's like, that was nothing. And Colin's like, I know everyone at school hates me, but to me, they're still my friends. And I love this. This is Colin standing. He's like, I'm not just going to try to do this just because I'm Skoppergamon's kid. I'm going to go because like my friends at school are in trouble. I'm going to go try to help them. It's like, what's going on here? And so Colin's like, okay. And he's like, he's got his weapons and his little ship, and he's going, and the Straw Hats thankfully go with him. And Jinbei, everybody was like, Jinbei's going to go and do something to help the fire. we were right. He, was able to help with, stopping the fire here for where the kids are. So, Jinbei was able to do that, which is awesome. And so that part's taken care of. Those flames are out. And now we have it that, Colin, it's just like, it is this moment where, like, yeah, Colin doesn't always get along with the kids at school, but it's just like, he doesn't want them to be burned alive. He doesn't want them to be kidnapped or anything like that. He's still protective of them. He doesn't want that type of stuff to happen to them, because Colin at heart is a good person, from everything we've seen. And Nami's like, that's really nice of you, Colin. Let's save every last one of them. And Colin's like, yeah. And you can see that Colin's kind of like trying to not cry. And then we get Gunko showing up, and she's landed on like the figurehead area at the top of at the front of the boat. It's not a figurehead, but the front of the boat. She's like, there was a kid outside the school. And Colin is just like, oh my god. And the other Straw Hats are like, oh my god, like, where the F did you come from? And they're like, what? Who are you? And she's like, and a pretty rowdy one at that. And it's just like, the Straw Hats have finally met one of the Gods Knights. We have our first interaction. And like Gunko has like activated like activated her arrows and stuff like that from her sleeves. And such. Looks like she's, getting ready to probably what happened was like her and Summer saw what happened with like Jinbei showing up and using his, the over the shoulder current throw to throw the, water clouds up on there to, extinguish the fire, which was very good. And Summers is probably like, damn it, I didn't get to watch the kids burn to death. I wanted to have a witch trial. Damn it. Is like probably what Summers is doing. And then Gunko's like, okay. And she's like having to go over here, and she's like, okay, I'll go deal with that kid now. And going over here, and she's here, and we have Brook here, and we know that she's a Brook fan, so we'll see what happens in the next chapter once she, she realizes that Soul King Brook is on the boat that she just landed on. See what happens there. It may take her a second to recognize him because he's not in his like Soul King attire type of a thing, but he's still a talking, walking skeleton, so there's not that many things that you can, be like, oh, that can't be Brook. That thing has skin. She's like, well, whatever. Although, I was going to say, if Bonnie made Brook younger, if she made him a little kid again, would he be, like, have his, like, full body back? Like, all of his skin and organs and everything like that? I don't know. Maybe. So we have that, and we have a break next week, so we won't have a chapter next week. So we'll see how that goes. Once we, we'll see what happens after that. I think I covered everything I wanted to point out in this. Luffy and Grover would get along great as waiters. They would be a horrible wait staff, and the restaurant would have to close after paying so many different lawsuits from having hot food dropped on them, or cold food dropped on them, or utensils dropped on them, or things in their food that's not supposed to be in their food, or just Luffy eating their food. Luffy's trying to get Loki to eat, so there's that. Because Luffy's mind, it's just like, oh, you need meat to get better. And it's just like, yeah, that's I mean, technically, yes, you do need to have, like, good nourishment when you're trying to recover from being sick or injured. Having good nourishment will help in that recovery process. So, that's what we have here. I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!